Hey folks, this is Rhykker with a video on the latest Diablo 4 quarterly update. This is the Q2 update for 2022, the June update. And it seems like it's going to be all about the newly revealed 5th and final class for launch of Diablo 4, the Necromancer. More classes will come in the future, but we now have our 5 launch classes. That's going to be Barbarian, Druid, Rogue, Sorceress, and now Necromancer. Do be sure to have checked out the video we put up yesterday covering the reveal of the Necromancer along with the reveal that Diablo 4 is releasing in 2023 and why it's suggested that it's going to be within 12 months from today. In this video, we're going to go through the quarterly update and learn all about the Necromancer in Diablo 4. But first, real quick, I know some people are saying, oh man, how come we didn't get a sword and board class like a paladin or a crusader, or how come it's all returning classes? We have no thoroughly new class to Diablo 4. Technically, the rogue really is a new class with an old label. The rogue we're getting in D4 isn't like the rogue from Diablo 1, but nonetheless, some people were hoping for a fully unique new class for the 5th class for Diablo 4, and sure, yes, it would have been nice to have Diablo 4 really have a completely new class, bring its own identity, and give Diablo 4 that sense of identity and self and differentiation from the past games. A class where the devs could have really poured in all of their imagination and made something truly that they could own. I do think to some extent the Rogue is that for them right now, but nonetheless, the Necromancer is a safe choice. Everyone loves the Necromancer. Okay, asterisk, everyone loves the Necromancer. And if they hadn't put the Necromancer, you'd have the same thing like with the people complaining about lack of Paladin, lack of Crusader type character. The fact is you can never make everyone happy. So Necromancer was a safe choice. More classes will come in the future, and most likely thoroughly new classes will come as well. For now, it's just a nostalgia play. It's safe. It's a crowd pleaser. So let's dive in to the update. Welcome to the quarterly update. We hope you enjoyed last quarter's behind-the-scenes look at the Art of Sanctuary and its dungeons. If you've not seen our coverage of that, you can check out that video over here. In this blog, we're going to jump into some of the grittier details and mechanics of the Necromancer. You can think of this blog as a companion to that announcement, with our lead class designer Adam Jackson doing a deep dive into the core playstyles of the Necromancer, some of its skills, and its unique class mechanic, Book of the Dead, which we're going to colloquially call the Necronomicon. We'll also take a look at a selection of the incredible armor and weapons that Necromancers can use. D4 is committed to the principle of player choice. It shapes how we approach many of our systems, from character customization to the density and layout of our open world. Interesting, we'll revisit that. To the design of our classes and builds. To the density and layout of our open world. Okay, I believe with this they mean in the sense that there's going to be so much in the world that as you traverse it, it'll be your player choice on how you want to navigate that world. The story of Diablo 4 is non-linear. This is a first in Diablo history where you always play through everything very sequentially. I mean, Diablo 1 was literally you have to keep going down the levels one after another. D2 and D3, you play through the acts in a sequential narrative. Here, it seems like you can kind of go wherever and do whatever. You can follow the story, but you can also branch out and do other things. There will be little pop-up quests that may or may not trigger. They're pseudo-randomized within different areas that you can choose to go for or not. It does sound like Diablo 4 will have the greatest amount of player choice in all aspects of the game ever. As you'll see below, the Book of the Dead focuses on this idea of choice and what kind of Necromancer you want to be. So the preview we got is that the Book of the Dead somehow allows you to customize what kind of minions you're going to spawn, which is very interesting sounding. We'll just read through. So this was signed Joe Shelley, the new game director. And now we're passing it off to Adam Jackson. So Necromancer trailer, we've already seen that. We played that in our yesterday video. We know that the Necromancer has a storied history in our franchise, and we are taking a lot of care to give players an experience that lives up to the hype. We have also spent a considerable amount of time making sure that fans of the Diablo 2, Diablo 3, and Diablo Immortal versions of the Necromancer see something familiar with what we have to offer, while at the same time creating something unique for Diablo 4. Read on to see what the Necromancer is all about. It is true that each of these games, yes, it's still the Necromancer, but they did include their own unique and new twists on the class. And from what little we've seen from yesterday's gameplay trailer, it seems like D4 does this as well, while still paying homage to what has been. So, class features. The Necro has two different types of resources they use, Essence and Corpses. So this is what was established in Diablo 3. Essence is their primary resource, that's their mana, which restores itself automatically at a slow rate. Using basic skills on the Necromancer will also grant Essence, so we have a generator as well, allowing them to cast their skills more often. Corpses, on the other hand, are the leftover remains of enemies who die near the Necro. These remains can be used to summon skeletal minions or to power various other skills, such as Corpse Explosion. In addition to appearing when enemies are killed near the Necro, corpses can also be generated via various effects. That was always a problem in Diablo 2, right? Lack of corpses, all your minions die, and then womp womp, well, how do I summon my skeletons back now? I gotta go to some low-level zone to farm up kills to summon my skeletons. This is why a lot of mods for D2 gave the Necromancer some kind of ability to summon corpses, giving you additional control over how often you want to interact with corpses. While there will be plenty of corpses at a baseline level, we're aware that some players will want to lean into this resource, and as a result have included plenty of options to ensure that they are not left wanting. So Diablo 3, for instance, for those of you who are more Diablo 2 players, gave a number of different ways to generate corpses. It doesn't mean it was super easy. You do have to basically sacrifice something, right? If you're picking some kind of skill that's going to generate corpses in some way, that's at the expense of something else. So it's not going to be as simple as, well, just give me all the corpses. There is some decision to make, some balance point over how many corpses you will want to be able to summon, and therefore how many corpse generating powers you may or may not want to take. Assuming you want corpses at all. I do suspect there might be some no corpse builds. As far as weapons and other unique gear, oh, look at this screenshot. Damn, alright, looking forward to that. Necros use swords, daggers, wands, focuses, and shields. Okay, there's your shield class, folks. Some people were saying, no sword and board, no buy. Okay, sword, board, done, Necro. In addition to these, they are the only class that can use scythes. Alright, let's take a look at these Necromancer weapons here. Necromancer. Damn, look at that. Look at those, like, tattoos or markings on her, the occult, love it. That scythe. Okay, this is a cool Necro. Ah, both of them. Yes. Damn, look at that. Look at that. That upgrade. That is so D2 armor. Love it. Look at that. Yes. Those are Necromancers, man. Love the bone armor. This is a little bit... Oh, look at the red eyes. This is like the more vampiric look. I love the red cape. That is awesome. Swinging that scythe, yes. So that's something that D3 added. It was a little bit more armor sets that were leaning towards blood mage vampiric style. That is... Oh, what is that around her face? Is that some kind of... It's a COVID mask. No. That helmet, look at that. Cool. Okay. So this is a little bit more shamanistic Necro. Interesting. Yeah, you know, we had that as well. That's true. Yeah, yeah. A little bit more piecemeal, put together. Whoa, what is this? Oh my goodness. What? This looks... That's so metal. Oh, yeah. What? Okay. That is metal AF. Oh my gosh. Alright, this is the coolest Necro ever. Yes! Sword and board, boys. This is a Death Knight. This... I love the range of styles from more classical Necro to hardcore metal band. This is the King of the Dead right there, damn. This looks like Lost Ark or some Korean MMO pretty boy people, but it's okay. Look at that skull, the king, the god of the Necros. Yes. Amazing. Man, that video was labeled Necromancer weapons. All I paid attention to was the armor, actually. Oh, and here's something I was wondering about. I felt like I wasn't really seeing much note on curses in the gameplay, but here we go. What self-respecting Necro will be running around the world of Sanctuary without curses? We're happy to say that you will be able to put these nasty debuffs on your enemies to your heart's content, with skills like Decrepify and Iron Maiden making a return. Speaking of metal bands, Playstyle. So Necro has 4 high-level playstyles that players can choose between. Bone, Darkness, Blood, and the Army. Seems like they're adding something new every time. So D3 really added blood. D2 didn't really have blood as a focus of the skills. D3 added that in a big way. And now it seems like darkness is what D4 is adding, unless this is just curses relabeled, but I think they would call it curses if that were the case. But we'll find out. Bone, classic since D2. Bone skills are relatively physical in nature and thus benefit more heavily from effects such as critical strike. These skills also benefit from having and spending large amounts of essence, as they have various effects that can cause each of their individual attacks to be even more powerful. Interesting, to be even more powerful, huh? Large amounts of essence, various effects that can cause each of their individual attacks to be even more powerful. So is that going to mean that you can use an attack without essence, but if it spends essence, it's going to be stronger? Or is it going to be something that scales based on how much essence you spend? We have some skills like that in Diablo 3, where a skill can have a rune that transforms it in such a way that instead of costing 40 mana, it consumes all of your mana, and the more mana it consumes, the more damage it deals. Bone Spirit is back in Diablo 4, and it now has a unique twist that exemplifies what Bone skills are all about. Bone Spirit not only has a cooldown, that's going to upset some D2 people, but also consumes all essence the player currently has. Well, there you go. Once cast, a Spirit of Bone is conjured that seeks out the nearest enemy. Upon reaching them, the spirit will explode, dealing a high amount of damage to the target and all other enemies in the area. This damage is increased by a certain percentage per point of essence spent, bingo, meaning that players who spend the maximum amount of essence will deal a significant amount of damage to enemies hit. This skill can also be upgraded, so that when it critically strikes, through the skill tree, of course, yes. So we don't have skill runes in the same way that we have in Diablo 3. We also don't have a skill tree in the way we have in Diablo 2, in that you just put more points and it gets stronger. This can be upgraded depending on whether you take this upgrade in the skill tree, is how I'm interpreting this, so that when it critically strikes, its cooldown is significantly reduced. Aha! Meaning that players who commit to generating lots of essence while also having a high critical strike chance will get a lot of damage from this skill. So crit strike and crit damage are affixes that are problematic in Diablo 3, and I think games in general, where they're two systems that feed into each other, and therefore stacking both is just always so beneficial that it tends to outweigh anything else. But what I really enjoy is having mechanics tied around crits. Crit strike chance is interesting. When you critically hit, you deal more damage, but you can also tie other mechanics to that. When you critically hit, you deal more damage and something else happens, which is why I do believe having just crit strike chance as an affix without crit strike damage is beneficial, particularly when you build mechanics around crit striking such that some builds will want it more than others, as opposed to every build wants crit strike chance and crit damage all the time. Another bone skill the Necros will have access to is Bone Prison. Yes, I hope we get Bone Wall as well. When the player casts Bone Prison, they slam their weapon into the ground, calling forth a circular wall of bone to surround the targeted enemy or area. Enemies cannot move through this space while the Bone Prison persists. Maybe it's serving the purpose of both Bone Wall and Bone Prison, which makes it incredibly versatile and able to be combined with many other skills, even those that are not themed around bone. Bone Prison is great for blocking off hallways, trapping groups of enemies inside to set them up for an AoE attack, or for simply sectioning off a group of enemies to deal with later while you handle higher priority targets. I'm surprised there's no mention of PvP here, because damn, hard CCs like this can be very powerful in the PvP aspect of the game. Alright, let's see this in action. Oh, that looks cool. So that's a new look to Bone Prison. I like the look. Yeah, cool. Darkness. Here we go. Let's find out. Is this something new? Darkness skills. Use shadow magic. Yes, that is new. To overwhelm their enemies. We've seen, I think, shadow magic or shadow skills also with the rogue. So it seems a new damage type in D4 is shadow. These kinds of attacks tend to be damage over time based, or attack multiple times in a short window, with various benefits and rewards being granted for damaging enemies in this way. With various benefits and rewards being granted for damaging enemies in this way. Interesting. So is this almost a support type? Well, they say you can lean completely into it. Alright. Darkness skills also tend to have various debuffs and crowd control elements, so that they can keep their enemies at bay while they die a slow, painful death. Right away I'm seeing this as, if you want to be a pure support build for your team, Darkness seems like a good way to go. Decompose is a basic darkness skill that allows you to channel dark magic onto enemies, dealing damage to them while also generating essence. Unlike other basic skills, Decompose also periodically summons corpses, making it much easier to ensure that you have a steady supply on your hand to use for summoning skeletons. So it seems regardless of what kind of build you go for, you'll likely want at least some darkness skills. Another darkness skill is Blight. Blight launches a ball of dark energy in a direction. Upon hitting an enemy or expiring, it deals an explosion of damage. I just realized actually there's no poison damage. Okay, so we're losing poison and we're getting shadow instead. Poison was a very strong part of the D2 Necro. D3 started phasing it out. Looks like it's gone now in D4. So Blight deals an explosion damage while leaving behind a defiled area, dealing periodic damage to enemies inside over time. This skill deals a high amount of damage to enemies who are standing in place, whether that's due to fighting your undead minions or to being contained via other skills like Bone Prison. Let's have a look-see. Darkness skills, okay. So he's channeling this skill, okay. Reminds me of Siphon Blood from D3, just without the blood. Speaking of blood, Necros can also use the power of blood magic. So, okay, just to quickly recap, visually, Darkness is a little underwhelming, but I mean, it does seem like it's a little bit more on the support side of things. Support skills tend to be less sexy. But again, I imagine Darkness is going to be a very important part of a Necromancer's toolkit. Blood. Necros can use the power of blood magic to siphon the life from their enemies. Not only do these skills tend to have defensive-oriented benefits, interesting, they also have many ways to turn that defense into offense for the player, empowering them and rewarding them for having large amounts of max health, as well as keeping their current health total high. Blood Surge draws a small amount of blood from nearby enemies to the Necro that then expels a Blood Nova, yes, dealing damage near the player's location. The damage of the Blood Nova is increased per enemy drained, which incentivizes you to be in the middle of a pack of enemies for maximum effect. Another blood skill is Blood Mist. Upon activation, the Necromancer disperses into a bloody mist, becoming temporarily immune to all damage while draining the life of any nearby enemies that they pass through. Nice mobility power. This is a universally powerful defensive skill that can give you the time you need to regroup in those dire moments where you become overwhelmed. I can see every Necro build using Blood Mist. Let's see that in action here. Alright, that's cool. I guess that's the Blood Nova? The veins on the ground? Blood Nova's cool. I do kind of miss the D3 Blood Nova. That's splashing wave. Feels more like it has more of an oomph to it. This is still cool though. One thing I'm not getting from this that I don't know if it's that it's different or if it's not made explicit, but in Diablo 3, blood skills often or always have a blood cost. So the general theme of blood skills in D3 is they are stronger, but you have to expend health. So it turns your health into an additional resource for you to potentially manage, that I thought was a neat little twist there. The D2 example would be the Paladin's Sacrifice. Yeah, I do wonder what they mean here with regards to empowering them and rewarding them for having large amounts of max health, as well as keeping their current health. Well, keeping their current health total high is obvious. It's their healing. I wonder if what they just mean by rewarding them for having a large amount of max health is, well, if you get into the middle of a bunch of enemies, if you don't have a lot of max health, you're gonna die. Many ways to turn that defense into offense for the player. I really want to see more about that. I hope it really does lean into giving blood magic its own unique feel. Then lastly, we have the army. As you would expect, Necros can summon the undead to do their bidding. We also allow players to specialize into empowering their army as much as possible, which includes various kinds of skeletons as well as the classic golem. One advantage to this method of playing is that it can easily incorporate the benefits of bone darkness or blood skills, allowing you to have a great deal of customization to how you want to interact with your army. As an example, we believe it will be perfectly viable to have a player pursue a darkness-themed army build with Decompose as their basic skill to generate corpses, as there's an obvious synergy there. However, if the player wishes to generate corpses via other means, they can just as easily take a nostalgia trip to the year 2000 and just chuck bone spears at their enemies from a distance while opting for all the bone skill synergies that the Necro has to offer. Now I noticed they said synergies here. I wonder, is that just coincidence, or do they mean Diablo 2 style synergies? Obviously in Diablo 2, synergy means something very specific, but synergy is also just a word that means two things can work together well. So in Diablo 2, for instance, a synergy would be putting points into one skill gives some kind of buff to another skill, generally a damage buff. It was a neat little system introduced to the game post-launch that helped incentivize putting points into skills outside of just your main branch skills, and also because you reach a point where it's like, well, I've maxed out my main skill, I'm just wasting skill points now in other things I'm never going to use. Well, at least now I have a reason to take this other skill because it's going to buff my main skill. It was a good solution to the problem that existed. I wouldn't want to see that exact implementation in Diablo 4. I would just want to avoid that problem altogether from the root. I still believe synergies are interesting, but I want them to be more meaningful and interesting than just putting points into other skill gives 2% bonus to damage per skill point, etc. We went through a lot of iteration on how we want the experience of summoning the undead to feel for the player, and how much of their skill bar should be dedicated to this part of the class. To that end, we've come up with what we feel is the best possible version to ensure that players have as much customization as possible over not only their army itself, but also in which other skills they want to use to support their own unique playstyle. If a player wants to have the max number of summon units possible, then they will only have to dedicate 2 buttons to their skill bar. Wait. Okay. Sure. One to raising skeletons, and the other for their golem. Okay, so like in Diablo 2, you had summon skeleton, summon skeletal mage, golem, you had revivify. In Diablo 3, you had the same 4 as well. So now we're bringing it down to 2. Okay. The raise skeleton button is a one-stop shop to raise all the different skeletons a player can summon. And the golem button is used to command the golem to use a unique effect that is dependent on the type of golem that is currently active. With this setup, we found a great balance between having the necessary tools for raising and commanding a Necromancer army, while also leaving room for player expression and what additional skills they want to put on their bar. Okay, I'm guessing this is coming with the Necronomicon here. Because the question, of course, is, well, how do we do that? I believe what we're seeing here is some regular skeletons and 3 skeletal mages, it would appear. And then that is a blood golem or bone golem? Bone golem. Well, there's bones, but there's also muscle tissue. Alright, onto the Book of the Dead, Klaatu Verata necktie, let's go. Speaking of armies, what self-respecting necromancer isn't wandering around with one? Well, actually, that might be you. Wait, what? While we absolutely have the full support you would expect to fulfill all your undead summoning needs, we are also giving some love to players who want a more independent playstyle. Oh, okay. So here we go, we see the mechanic, Book of the Dead. Skeletal warriors, skirmishers. Skeletal mages, shadow. Golems, blood. Okay, so you're selecting within your skeletal warriors. Do you want skirmishers? Do you want the defensive ones? Skeletal mages, do you want the ones that cast shadow magic? Do you want the ones that cast other skills? Okay. Golems, blood, iron, clay, sure. Cue the Book of the Dead, the Necro's unique class mechanic right from the moment you log in. You will start with an extra skill on your bar, Raise Skeleton. So extra skill, so this isn't even costing us anything. It's just free. We don't have to sacrifice a skill slot, a skill button for, wow, okay. With this button, you will immediately be able to raise undead warriors to fight by your side. In addition to this, you will have access to the Book of the Dead. This is a space where you can customize your army or lack thereof with increasing options as you level your character. So awesome, okay. There are 3 customizable summons in this space: Skeletal Warriors, Skeletal Mages, and the Golem. Each summon also has one of 3 specializations that you can choose from. As an example, you can have your Skeletal Warriors be Skirmishers, Defenders, or Reapers. So Defenders will be sword and board, presumably they're better at tanking. Skirmishers will probably be fast attackers, and then Reapers probably going to be wielding a 2-handed scythe, probably big damage boys. Skirmishers are a more standard warrior but have increased damage and reduced health. Defenders have bonus health, and Reapers have slower attacks, deal high damage in an AoE in front of them, okay, area damage build, and have a special wind-up attack that deals a high amount of damage. In addition to this, each specialized unit in the army has unique upgrades available to them, giving you even more customization over how each unit... Wait a minute. Each specialized unit in the army has unique upgrades available to them, giving you even more customization over how each unit in their army functions in their overall playstyle. Can we get examples? These units and upgrades will have synergies with the various playstyles mentioned above, as well as add other potential ways to play. I actually like that the difference between skirmishers and Reapers is single target versus AoE. Typically, necromancers with a lot of skeletons or a lot of summons do really good single target damage because all your summons will target the one enemy, but tend to be pretty, well, not too good at area damage. So giving area damage options out of summons is great. I do want to see how we can even customize these further though. Okay. Yeah, oh my goodness, select an upgrade. Oh, so that's what, as we are, obviously that is a placeholder asset, as we are leveling up, we'll be able to select between upgrades. Okay, and then the sacrifice option is, I don't want to have any of these. Let me sacrifice, I want to be by myself. In addition to all this customization, we also have added the ability for players to sacrifice different components of their army for personal benefits. Next to each unit type in the Book of the Dead is an extra option to sacrifice the ability to summon that unit in exchange for a personal, permanent buff. These buffs are carefully designed and placed so that players can mix and match having none, some, or all the possible summon units while still having relevant options to enhance their build. Our goal with this system is that there should be something for everyone to be excited about. There are relevant, powerful options to choose from whether players want to play with a full army, part of the army, or even for those who wish to forego their army completely and play solo. We've had a blast playing with the system so far, and we're excited to see the various combinations that you all come up with to push your necromancers to the next level. And as always, they're always open to feedback here. But yeah, that is the Necromancer, so my initial thoughts are very positive. My first class in Diablo 2 was the Necromancer. It is a very nostalgic class for me. I've always loved the Necromancer. Diablo has always had my favorite Necromancer in any game, incarnation of a Necromancer in any game I've played. I do think Diablo 2 fans who really loved having the Poison Nova, yeah, that's not there anymore. I think poison is going to be reserved for the rogue. Assassins typically are associated more with poison than necromancers. Necro also didn't have a ton of different poison skills, but I remember even in D3 downplaying the poison, there was some resistance, there was some lamenting of the loss of poison, but it does look like we're getting some cool and varied powers to select from. A lot of customization options here. Visually love the Necro. Prior to this, I thought the Rogue would be my starter class in D4. Now I am torn. One thing I really liked about the Necromancer in Diablo Immortal was the variety of playstyles you can have. It's not just relegated to, oh, this is a ranged class, this is, you know, a class that does X. It was kind of like, well, you can kind of choose. You have skills that can do a number of different things, can play at different ranges. It seems like the same may hold true here. You could be a sniper from afar with Bone Spear. You could get more up close and personal. But I turn the question to you folks. What do you think about the Necromancer? What were you hoping the 5th class would be? What class will you start with in D4 if you've decided? Sound off in the comments. And again, if you haven't seen yesterday's video, we talked more about endgame. They gave us a couple little endgame updates. Do check that out. And the next quarterly update we can expect at the end of September. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, Patreon, and YouTube supporters for making these videos possible. If you like what you see on this channel and want to support the creation of more content, you can consider pledging on YouTube or Patreon and unlocking behind-the-scenes content, monthly virtual hangouts, and more. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. Check out these other videos and subscribe to join Rhykker's Raiders for more Diablo content.